I'm joined by Kwasi Kwarteng, former Chancellor of the Exchequer. Kwasi, is it right that she's gone?
Absolutely. I mean, I was surprised at the statement last night, as you were, when essentially the chairman said she did something very wrong, but we fully support her. In fact, as you pointed out, what she did was the worst thing pretty much a banker can do, apart from run off with the funds yourself. To breach client-customer confidentiality in that way is an absolute no-no. And it was very surprising, having admitted that she did that, that they supported her.
Very surprising. And we've got a CEO of Coutts, who, of course, endorsed my removal, my exit, as they called it, from the bank on political grounds, not economic grounds. We've got Howard Davis, whose job is to manage the governance of the bank, and that must be called into question. We still own 39% of this banking group. You know, billions of taxpayers' money, 45 billion in total was initially pumped into this. Are we getting value for money?
Well, look, I think that they've got questions to answer. I think the fact that you had to get a subject access request to expose the fact that what they said was completely wrong, was porkies, essentially, that was the nub of the issue. Because they'd said one thing, and you found out that they were it was completely different. And actually, to read the text, as I did, of your subject access request, what they'd said about you, I mean, it was almost
horrendous,
extraordinary. You were racist, you're this, you're that, it was appalling. And I think the fact that you actually pursued that was critically important to this whole story. And as you've pointed out, it's a much wider story than just you or some MPs or political people. It's about small business people. I got in my mailbag a number of people who run very successful small businesses who've had exactly the problem.
I mean, there are two angles here, I think. I mean, forget the PEPs for the moment, although I'm going to be talking to Royston Smith MP in a moment. But you've got the cultural problem, which is banks are becoming political, banks are becoming moral arbiters.
That's right.
And I hope Andrew Griffith read them the Riot Act today.
No, I think he would have done.
On that point. But the general debanking point, as an MP, Surrey MP, how aware of this have you been?
I haven't been aware of it at all, actually. I mean, it's something that bubbles in the background. And my constituency is a great constituency for small business. Lots and lots of people run businesses. And they've all said to me that they've had problems before. But this deliberate debanking because of what views you may have or because of things that you're associated with, that's something that's new. And I think what you did was actually shine a light on something that's very, very troubling. Because whatever your political views, you know, people don't agree with everything I say, people don't agree with everything you say. But I think there's a general sense of fairness that you should be able to get a core service regardless of your political affiliations or views.
I mean, Kwasi, we used to have, cut to the end game on this, we used to have the right in this country, the fundamental right to a bank account. And you and I both know, as each year goes by, and as things become more digitised, and I still think cash plays an important role.
Yes, it does.
But you can't really live without a bank account. That right went when the post office was privatised.
Yes.
That right exists in our neighbouring, France, Germany, countries like that. Should we reinstate somehow the right?
I think we've got to look at that. I think, as you've pointed out, you can't get very far in the modern world without a bank account. You know, you're always being asked bank details. You're always being asked, how do you get your wages? How do you actually survive? And the idea that people are deprived of that, I think, is wrong for arbitrary reasons, for reasons to do with woke culture, whatever it might be. And actually, what I find, a thought experiment I find interesting, is that if you'd been Jeremy Corbyn and for whatever reason he'd been deprived for political grounds of a bank account from his bank, this would have been an absolute outcry. And rightly, people would have been furious that this could happen in Britain. And actually, when I talk to people about this, they say, well, we didn't think that this could happen in Britain. This is the sort of thing you read about in Soviet times or China or all of this. And I think it really stirs people's indignation.
Final thought on this, if I may. Globally, through the European Union, laws coming into our laws and through our own compliance with FCA and elsewhere, we all know there's a massive problem with the international drugs trade laundering money. We know that's a huge problem, and we want to take steps to prevent it. I think the anti-money laundering legislation that has been put in place in this country has become a sledgehammer to miss the nut. We're not catching the big criminals, and we're punishing small business.
But that's what happens generally with the bureaucracy. I mean, you look at HMRC, who generally have been in this problem. They will go for easy prey. They go for people who are less likely to develop.
The little guy, the little woman,
exactly right.
Get
Small
punished.
Business.
Kwasi,
that's right.
I'm going to attempt to rally large numbers of these people.
Well, good for you. More
I think
power
we
to
need to have a really powerful group of people
Sure.
here. I think the scale of the problem is bigger than I could have even imagined 2 weeks ago. But how do we get change?
Well, I think what you say is the right approach. I think when you get galvanised people, you get thousands of people, because this problem is much bigger than I or you anticipated. And that's where you get movements, and people should be writing to their MPs, and then slowly it percolates up to government. And actually, the government, I think, have done a reasonable
They
job.
responded to my situation.
That's
very
right. They have,
Yeah.
and they didn't have to do that.
No.
And in many instances, they haven't. In the past. But I think over the last couple of weeks, they've done well. And I think Alison Rose, they were right. Cabinet ministers, I think, were briefing yesterday. There was no way she could stay.
No.
I mean, any bank clerk who'd done that would have been
Out.
sacked
Gone.
immediately.
No, I
So
agree.
the idea that she could get away with that, I think, was, again, hit against people's sense of fairness.
Kwasi Kwarteng, absolute
Thank
pleasure
you.
to have you on the show.